afternoon, and welcome to our Glendale City Council workshop. This meeting is for council members to review and discuss important issues, projects, and future council meeting agenda items. It's a work-study session only and allows the council to hear input from city staff. No action will be taken at this workshop, and there will not be an opportunity for public comment. This meeting is streaming live on Glendale's Facebook and YouTube pages and the city's cable television station, Glendale Channel 11. Thank you for joining us.
All right, well, good afternoon. Welcome to Glendale City Council Workshop Session, June 27, 2023. The meeting is called to order. Attendance roll call is not necessary. Everybody is here. If you'd please take note of that. With that, Ms. Bauer, if you'll just go ahead and just introduce item number 1, we'll get rolling.
Glendale Elementary School District System of Care Partnership Update.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. Here to have the first item on today's agenda is Jean Marino, our Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So today I will be providing an update on the progress since I was last here in front of you regarding the System of Care Center and our partnership with the Glendale Elementary School District. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the school district representatives that are here in the audience today, Superintendent Sagata and Assistant Superintendent Lafitte. They have been great partners in discussing this project and sharing information and their vision, and we're very excited to be a part of making that vision a reality. So today's presentation, I'll just talk very briefly about the System of Care Center and what it is and some of the things that they've accomplished for those that are just tuning in today. We'll talk about the prior council consensus. I'll give you an update on the design study results. So when we met last, the direction was move forward with the design study and bring that back to the council. And then we'll go over the staff recommendations and then the council consensus that's needed today. So the System of Care Center is a facility that's owned and operated by the Glendale Elementary School District. It's located at 7677 West Bethany Home Road. It is a former school campus that was closed due to enrollment issues, but they had this vision of creating a place where the community members could go and receive wraparound services in a variety of areas, and to really provide that coordinated care and to provide a campus environment where people could receive a variety of services in one place, all which are really designed to address social determinants of health. So this is just a snapshot of their providers. There's about 14 different partners on campus, and obviously you can see that they provide a variety and a breadth of services there that are available to families, including food distribution and parent workshops and health and nutrition, all things that are really designed to address those social determinants of health. So they have really been in a kind of soft launch for a little over a year, but I've included some information on this slide here. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but they have really accomplished quite a bit in this first year of operations, really serving families in a holistic manner, from everything from food to participants in different educational classes and immunization clinics and different things like that. And so we really do feel like the services we provide out of our human services areas of community services department will really be a good fit for this campus environment. So an overview of the campus is shown here, and I've circled the building that's being proposed for the relocation of the human services divisions that I oversee. It's about 12,000 square feet in that building. We're proposing a 5-year lease with optional renewals. There would be no leasing fee or rent. We would each mutually require a minimum of 12 months if we were to decide that it's not working out either way. And then the cost to the city is for the tenant improvements, parking improvements, and then on an annual basis, our share of the utilities and our share of the custodial. So council previously provided consensus to budget this in the 23-24 budget. So the $2 million for the one-time tenant improvements, and then $30,000 for the annual ongoing for the utilities and other shared costs. And then in the 24-25 budget, $1 million for covered parking and electric vehicle charging. So we engaged Architecton to do a design study, and really what they were looking at is two major components. One, will everybody fit in that building with the vision that we had for services in that building? And then two, what's the rough order of magnitude on costs? And is it so that we could verify, was our budget in alignment with what the cost estimates are? And so essentially, they did verify that based on the programming needs, they went out and did site visits at all of our divisions to kind of see how is the operation now, talked a little bit about what our vision is for the future, looked at city design standards for both the temporary spaces and the new city hall. So what do those workstations look like? What is the design concept in terms of making sure that our offices are in the corridors and, cubicles near the natural light, and so that that light flows through. All of those design concepts to be incorporated into this design as well. But really focusing on our primary objective, which is improving the delivery of service. So in my last presentation, I showed you some of the public service counters and the public areas where we serve clients. We did not have any designated client meeting areas, and some of those public service areas weren't very welcoming for our most vulnerable populations. So essentially, the design study proved out we can get everything in there. We can improve the delivery of services with the design, and it also creates a more collaborative work environment and is a significant improvement over our existing facilities. So this is the floor plan. I won't get into great detail on this other than to show you that the bottom half and the right half are really all the staff work areas. And then that upper left corner, looking at it from my screen, is really the client meeting areas. And you'll see some of that in the design concepts that are shown. So it does include 4 client meeting rooms, private client meeting rooms, which we do not currently have and are very important to having one-on-one conversations with clients to help understand more about barriers that they may be experiencing and additional assistance that they may need. Has ample waiting room. It will house all 53 employees. It has 2 public restrooms. I will point out that it will be up to code to require the 1 adult changing station. Has staff breakout spaces, a break room, collaboration space, and then again, utilizes the city's design standards for workspace and furniture.
Mayor? Go ahead. So I didn't hear you mention, I'm looking through the floor plan, so a couple questions. First question is, in the section that belongs to the city, or that we are occupying, I should say, will that be occupied only by city, or yes? Okay.
Mayor and Councilmember Aldama, this floor plan that I'm showing here, this would be the city occupying that entire building on that campus.
Excellent. Next question is, I'm not sure which services can you tell me what services we're providing from that area? Because I have a question, but it depends how you answer there.
Mayor and Councilmember Aldama, our Community Action Program, which is all of our crisis utility and rent services, our Community Revitalization Program, which is our emergency home repair and home rehab programs and services, our Community Engagement Division, our Public Housing Division, and all of admin.
Okay, what I don't see here, don't know if you can make some adjustments. This is probably the appropriate time. So I can remember a time when my mother and I were receiving these very same vouchers and services in line from 5 in the morning until 10 o'clock in the morning and waiting in line. As children, we had nowhere to go but to be in line. So is there a space here for those parents who bring their children that have to wait there for long periods of time, a room that the kids can go to and be occupied during the time that they're being served? Can we add that, or is there somewhere in here already? Because there'll be a lot of kids that come.
Mayor and Councilmember Aldama, when I get into showing you some of the design concepts, you'll see that there's definitely ample waiting area. We could incorporate some toys and things like that, which we have done in the past. But the other thing that's really exciting about this campus is that it has playgrounds and really nice outdoor areas. So if there are multiple family members, a family member could be meeting inside with staff while, someone else is tending to the children outside and they're playing on the playground. There's lots of open space. So it actually is really kind of cool that we have that capability to have that amenity near us where children can, be playing on a playground in a secure environment while their parents are receiving services.
Yeah, I understand the outside piece. During summer, it'd be difficult to be in. Is the lounge for staff in this photo? I'm looking at the elongated finished plan here for the building. And is that lounge for staff or for visitors?
Mayor and Councilmember Aldama, I think it will be clearer when I get into the,
Okay, we'll
the design concepts.
continue then. Thank you.
Okay. So this is a design of the front office reception. So you can see the door would be on the right. You walk in, it's very open, it's welcoming. It still addresses the barriers, so that we still have those COVID-19 protections or future issues. Those few chairs that you see there, those will extend further to the left. So on this slide here, I wish I had a pointer. On this slide here, you can see where those doors are.
Yeah.
It looks like there's about room for 10 or 12 chairs there. So we could always incorporate some, like little play areas for kids in that area or in another area that I'll show you momentarily. So then through that door on the right, there's a glass door there. That would take you into what we're calling the client meeting areas. So in the client meeting areas, this is a picture of what it would look like inside after you pass through that glass door. So you can see that there's the private meeting spaces that have a door. Those would be where we'd be having confidential client meetings. And then there's additional waiting area here. So if we have a client that just needs to fill out some paperwork or we need an overflow, that type of a thing, we have ample seating space and workspace so that if a client did need to sit down and fill out paperwork, this is where they would do that. And again, there's some opportunities here where we can ensure that we have plenty of things to keep children occupied. This is another view of that same room, again, just showing that kind of lower furniture, and you can see that there's two doors there. One is the door where the public would enter that room, and one is a secure staff door that goes into that reception area. This is the staff break room and meeting space combo, so you can see that there's a small break room there for staff. It will still be ample, and we'll be able to accommodate having our staff have their lunches and things like that there. The other nice thing, as I mentioned before, in partnership with GESD, there are other spaces that will be available on campus for larger group training and things like that we can work with the administration to book. And again, it's a very nice outdoor park-like space, frankly, where we think it'll be ample space both for staff and the community members. Those two rooms there to the left that show the sort of that frosted glass, those would be the staff meeting rooms. So one is a little bit larger and one is a little bit smaller. They do open into the break area, but we don't see any concerns from an operational perspective of being able to manage with that setup. This is an example of I'll call it the west end of the staff area, showing the design, which is, again, conducive to the city's design principles. We're putting the cubicles up against that natural light. That natural light is flowing through transparent panels in the tops of some of those larger cubicles to the offices on the right. And a mix of taller, a little bit more private cubicles for people who are on the phone with clients frequently, and then smaller, lower cubicles for staff that may not need as much privacy. And then this is an example of the back office space from the reception area. So there were two doors off of that reception area. One goes into the back office and then one goes into the client meeting space. So this is just an example of what that would look like. And it's demonstrating that the reception space is, while separate from the back office space, is still readily accessible to that back office space. Any questions about the overall design?
Good.
Thank you, Mayor. My only question is this: we have not seen the design concept for City Hall yet, but I understand we're moving away from traditional workspaces and into the 21st century. Was that concept also applied to this space, or are we still going to be using traditional cubicles and offices as we've done for the past 20 years?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, we worked very closely with both facilities and engineering to ensure that the city's design concepts that had already been established of standard work size, standard workstation, standard cubicle sizes were all incorporated into this design. So we are using the city's design standards for the new spaces.
Okay, so no, we're not moving into the 21st century. We're using what we've always used previously.
That's not what she said.
Mayor and Vice Mayor, what I would say is that right now, here in City Hall, I have a lot of staff in individual offices that maybe don't necessarily need to be into individual offices, and those staff are moving into more of a cubicle style. So that is a change, and that is consistent with the City Hall redesign project. The other thing that really is very indicative of this change is that you can see that the actual offices for supervisors and managers, they're not up against the natural light and hogging all of that natural light. They're in the centralized corridors, making sure that our foundational employees have nice space, access to light, modernized, and I'll talk about it in this picture here, modernized treatments, modernized lighting that help in terms of improving work, modernized color palette, which is really has the science behind it, designed to evoke productivity and those types of things. So it's difficult to see on the slide, but you can see like up at the top of the roof, there's recessed lighting, there's different types of treatments on the ceiling to designate walk areas and things like that. Those are all design principles that are being incorporated into the future designs. The other thing too is on these cubicles, the top, I'll say 2 feet is that opaque glass, so it creates a more open and collaborative environment, which is exactly what we're hoping for moving into the future.
Okay, thank you. My second question relates to the parking. I note on one of your slides that there are 53 employees. So will you be providing covered parking for 53 employees? What is your plan so far?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the budget slide, but that future project was to first, it was to see, okay, what is it going to cost us to do that covered parking now in the design study, but the actual construction of covered parking wouldn't be until next fiscal year. And we were planning for 50. So the parking lot itself currently has about 100. There is some additional parking that's available in the back area off of their basketball courts and things like that. So that's all something that we would work with the school district on to ensure that if we do go ahead and move forward with that covered parking project, that it's going to be conducive to the overall campus environment.
Okay, thank you.
So the construction cost estimates are shown here, and so I want to talk first about the interior construction budget, which was budgeted for fiscal year 23-24, so starting July 1, and the set aside was $2 million. The preliminary estimate that we've received through the design study was 2.186, so a little bit over budget for the interior design. A lot of that is due to the fact that we have to do all new restrooms. So the restrooms that are currently in that facility are designed for children. There was one staff restroom, but really it's about the plumbing and the fixtures and the redesign of those bathrooms, as well as there is one supporting wall that is being removed and replaced with steel beams so that we can create that open environment for the for the client meeting area. So those are two really big cost drivers. We did look to see, was there a way that we could reduce the budget to get it, within that $2 million? And it was it was already on thin margins. And so you'll see kind of what we're recommending to make sure that we live within the overall budget. On the exterior construction budget, which was those parking canopies, we had estimated about $1 million for that project in fiscal year 24-25. That estimate is actually coming in lower at 521. So there's a surplus of about 478. So after kind of looking at it and working with engineering and facilities, what we're recommending is because that future covered parking. The cost may increase with, inflation and those types of things, is adding an additional 30% contingency onto that estimate, just to make sure that if we do move forward with that parking in the next fiscal year, that we have ample money to do that. And so recommending the budget for that to be $678,421. And then taking that surplus and applying it, the $321,000 surplus, and applying it to the interior construction. And what that will do for us is make sure that we can account for any anomalies that might arise, as you know, through the construction process, so that we won't have to come back and ask for change orders. And so the total budget does not change. So the total budget for the project was $3 million, and the total budget doesn't change. We're just recommending pulling money forward from the fiscal year 24-25 budget. It'll require an appropriation transfer this year, but it doesn't impact the budget, and that appropriation would be available in other projects. So there wouldn't be any impact to other projects to do that. And it would adjust, and then next, when we do the budget next year, we would adjust that exterior construction budget to reflect this. In addition, what we have been working on with the school district is there an opportunity so that we don't have to redirect our CAP clients 2 different times? Is there an opportunity to where we can serve CAP clients out of the existing facility now while the building is under construction? And they have been extremely gracious, and we've identified an opportunity to be able to do that at the campus so that we can redirect CAP clients to the campus once while the facility is being constructed. So the consensus direction that I'm looking for today is to go ahead and move forward with appropriate contracts and purchases not to exceed the $2.3 million for the interior improvements in fiscal year 23-24, to move forward with entering into that memorandum of understanding for the temporary space, and then to execute the facility use agreement for the permanent space, and then begin construction over the summer. And working with engineering, I just want to clarify here, the construction itself won't start over the summer, but the design, like the completion of the designs and the plan submittals could continue over the summer. And we would bring those construction contracts, which would be job order contracting, to council for ratification. Obviously not to exceed that $2.3 million. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Marino. So, as always, good work. Thank you. I do have a question. Does this, once we complete this building, whatever this building number is, building E, does that complete the campus, or are there still other vacant buildings that are going to be, or possibly, maybe not necessarily through Glendale, but other additional services could be offered? Does this complete the campus, or will there still be space?
Mayor and Councilmember Cholochop, I'll follow up with you. I'll get a comprehensive update from the superintendent on the construction. I do know that based on my prior conversations, they're expecting the Welcome Center construction to be complete within the next month or so, but I'll follow up and get a comprehensive update for you.
Okay, and then Mayor, I had another question. The temporary space that's going to be the result of the MOU, is that ready to use right now, or will we have to do anything, invest anything to make that usable for a temporary space to serve the CAP clients?
Mayor and Councilmember Cholochov, what we're proposing is that we're going to reuse some of the cubicles that are currently located here at City Hall from the 3rd floor that have been vacated. We're going to add, I think if I recall correctly, it was 7 workstations using existing furniture. So we've worked with facilities and our furniture vendor. They would be handling that, so there wouldn't be any additional cost on that. And then just for general awareness, so building F, that larger classroom that's located on the north side of that building in the middle is the classroom that they've offered us to use. Also in that building is like their family hub and some other services. So it'll be a good fit there.
Excellent. Mayor, if I could, I just want to say, Jean, thank you. You were doing an amazing job, very important work to residents in our community. And I mentioned to her on my way in, I said there was a really good story in The Independent published Monday about our point-in-time count. She hadn't even seen it yet. Our count, our homeless population counts down 58%. And I mean, it's not just Jean, there's a lot of other people doing good work, but Jean, your leadership has been one of the main reasons why that's happening, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if we need consensus on 3 separate things, or is there consensus for the 3 things asked?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, there you go. That
Thank
was
you.
easy. All right. Hey, item number 2, Ms. Bauer.
Water and wastewater infrastructure improvement plan and development impact fee update.
Mayor, members of council, here for second item today will be presented by John Murphy. He's our administrator of our budget and CIP, and he'll be joined by Ben Griffin from Tischler Bice, which is our consultant.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. John Murphy here with Ben Griffin from Tischler Bice. We're here to present to you the draft IIP and land use assumption and to ask your consensus to kind of get the ball moving here. So it's a long process. The state defines it. It's about 275 days. So today what we're going to do is just kind of present to you at a high level. This is the same type of information, same process that we just went through for the transportation land use assumption updates and transportation development impact fee update. And as it's been, council's practice in the past is to, make development pay for development, to not have current taxpayers, current ratepayers pay for development. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thanks. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, it's good to be back in Glendale. A year ago we did this with transportation, and it was about 4 years ago with the other fees, which do include water and wastewater. Since it's been a year, we'll do a very quick refresher on development fee basics. We'll look at the updated land use projections. We'll look at the IIP, or the infrastructure improvement plan, do a quick fee comparison to see how you stack up with other cities in the valley, and then we'll look at the adoption timeline. All right, so there are 3 things we have to prove with impact fees. There's need. So there are 2 parts to that. First is you need additional infrastructure, and the second part of that is that you need to have additional growth. So the land use assumptions prove that you're projected to have additional growth, and by working with water and wastewater staff, we have identified infrastructure or growth-related infrastructure needs. Move.
Try that one, Ben. Sorry about that. Hit that red.
All right.
Way
Is that
better.
better? Yeah.
Way better.
All right, so next up, proportionate share. So we want to make sure that, we're assessing fees proportionately to different types of development. So with water and wastewater, we're actually going to look at, gallons consumed or gallons generated by different types of land uses to vary the fees by, meter size. And finally, we have to prove benefit. And so that is, we look at that from two sides. First is, if the fee payer pays the city, you need to build something. So that's, just an accounting issue, which is very easy to ensure. The other part is, we want to make sure that they receive a benefit from this. So with a closed system like water or sewer, it's very easy. Once you connect, you receive a benefit from that. All right. There are 3 methodologies, and they align with points in time. So if we're looking to the past, that's cost recovery. So you've constructed something, there's excess capacity, and we want to have future development buy into that excess capacity. If we look at the present, that's incremental expansion, where we just say, hey, this is what we have today. We just want to maintain that level of service going forward. And then when we look to the future, that's the plan-based approach, where we say, we want, these improvements. So how do we get there? What is existing development share? What is future development share of those planned improvements? All right, so This is an update to what you saw a year ago. So essentially, this is MAG's projections of development, future development within Glendale. And so, if you look all the way to the right, that's the 10-year increase. So on the residential side, this is, about 4,200 additional housing units, and that translates into about 10,000 residents in those housing units. And then about 6 million square feet of non-residential development, which translates into just shy of 15,000 jobs within those 6 million square feet.
Mayor,
Yes.
I am going to question your assumptions and where you got them from for population and housing units. My district alone, I know, is going to increase somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,000 people between this year and next year. And you're projecting for the entire period an increase of 10,000 with regard to population. Where did you get your figures? Because I think they're too low.
So this is the data set produced by the Maricopa Association of Governments using the traffic demand model. I should have said this is for East Glendale because anything west of 115th does not connect to the water and wastewater system. This is only looking at development east of 115th.
I realize that, but that's my district, and I'm very familiar with it. MAG figures are traditionally low. They lowball everything. Why wouldn't you have gone to our planning department and gotten their figures, which I think would be higher than what MAG is providing you?
So, Vice Mayor, we have, your planning department has seen this and, did provide their blessing on moving forward with these projections.
Okay. I accept the basis of your assumptions, but I don't agree with them. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to start with the Water Infrastructure Improvement Plan, or Water IIP. So the service area will be East Glendale. We're looking at 4 components. These are all the same components that you have in your existing fees. So it's really just an update to the costs and the assumptions with that. So we're looking at water supply, wells, water treatment, and distribution lines. So the next slide. This proves the need. So what we're looking at in the top left, we look at FY22 demand data, and so we're saying, hey, going forward, we think that future accounts, residential or non-residential, will act in a similar fashion to your existing accounts. So we apply that to the projected growth over the next 10 years. And so the assumption is, you would increase average day demand by about 3 million gallons over the next 10 years. So what you'll see now is, you're going to see that $3 million show up several times. This is our cash flow projection. And so what we're doing here is saying, for example, with your water treatment, we're going to buy into this excess capacity because you have that available capacity for future development. And so if we take the cost of your water treatment infrastructure, we divide it by the capacity that it can serve, that comes out to $2.45 per gallon. So if we multiply that by that increase of about 3 million gallons, then your impact fees would generate about $7.5 million over the next 10 years to retire debt related to water treatment. For your water supply and your wells, those are both plan-based. And so we're basically just saying, hey, here's some improvements that we need, and future development will pay for a portion of that. So for example, the wells, we're showing, the potential for 9.3 million gallons of capacity. We're only projecting demand for about 3 million. So we don't want anyone to think that, the impact fees are going to pay for 100% of this. Some of these improvements you are, constructing for the benefit of existing development. So, it's sort of a blend of funding sources where impact fees may pay for a portion of it and, rate revenue may pay for another portion of it. But, what we're trying to do here is just show you the growth-related demand over the next 10 years of, each of these components.
Thank you, Mayor. So are we doing development planning based on new wells on groundwater? Or I'm just not sure I understand how this would figure into, we are?
Yes, so we are including future wells for groundwater.
But is that part of how we're planning out the build-out of east of 115th Avenue, is to include groundwater as a resource for, I mean, I know that that's what they use out on the other side of 115th Avenue, but is that part of, I mean, I understand that's an important part of our portfolio, but or is that use being considered for an additional water resource for providing water for new development east of 115th Avenue?
Yeah, and I'll actually turn that question over to staff.
I see. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Councilmember Tomachoff. With respect to, are you asking east of 115th Avenue or west? East?
East, well, we wouldn't be putting any wells in west of 115th
No,
Avenue.
we
Okay,
wouldn't.
right, so east of 115th Avenue.
So we are adding new well capacity just to add wells to our portfolio for redundancy, for emergencies, and for the Colorado River strategy. So if we get reduced deliveries from Colorado River or in the future from SRP, we could use wells to supplement that for a short time. But it does add to our water portfolio, and it is growth because it gives us more water capacity.
Okay, so that's where but we're not allowing development and saying, well, we're going to put wells here so we can develop this or develop that. We're using our existing water infrastructure. We may need, I understand, I mean, we just did 2 wells up in the Cholla district that were agricultural wells that were no longer operable. So that's the kind of thing that you're talking about doing, is just increase our portfolio to make sure that we have water available. But this is not part of our development strategy, is to increase our groundwater availability to increase development.
No, it is not.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, so what we're showing here, the proposed water fees, all we're doing here is just taking that cost per gallon. So we take the sum, which is $10.08. We multiply it by the average day demand from a residential customer, which is 335 gallons per day. And that comes up with our base, or 0.75 inch meter. So 1008 times 335 is $3,377 would be the proposed fee. And then as you go to a larger meter, we apply a capacity ratio, which basically just says, hey, a larger meter can take an increment more water than a smaller meter. So it's proportionately, adjusting that fee to that higher demand from those larger meters. So on a base meter, we're talking about an increase of $454 compared to your existing fee. All right, next up we have the wastewater IIP, same service area, so east of 115th. We're looking at wastewater treatment, a lift station, and collection lines. So similar to water, we look at the existing flow from your existing customers. And so the average residential user is generating 289 gallons per day, where a non-residential customer is generating almost 1,000. We apply that to 10 years of growth. And so we're saying over the next 10 years, your average day flow would increase by almost 1 million gallons per day. So similar to water, we're calling out that 10-year increase to show you how much revenue would be generated by this. So with wastewater treatment, we're just saying, hey, this is what it costs you to construct that treatment. This is how much capacity is provided. And so over 10 years, you can expect about $7 million in fee revenue to retire wastewater treatment debt. For lift station, we're saying, if it's $4.5 million, it provides, about 3.4 million gallons of capacity. Then over 10 years, it would generate about $1.3 million in impact fees to pay for that improvement. And then the final component would be the collection lines, where we're just saying, hey, you will build a certain number of collection lines over the next 10 years, so allocating that cost to future development. And then, just like we did with water, you add the cost per gallon, you multiply it by the average day generated by residential development, and so your base fee would be just under $4,500. Right, and then you can see just a comparison to other cities in the valley. You will notice that we've indicated which other cities are updating right now. So we're working with Goodyear, Surprise, Buckeye, and Peoria, and Casa Grande currently. So the trend has been, with the increase in, water acquisition costs and the increase in construction costs, that these fees are going up. So we did want you to see, which other cities were, updating at the same time as you.
And so, looking at the adoption timeline, where we sit today, it'd be June 27th. We'd like to get the LUA and IIP advertised starting on July 5th, and that's what will really start the clock. So, as I mentioned before, you can see that this is a long process, 275 days. So if everything goes according to the timeline, we'll have the new development fees effective on March 25th. And that's the conclusion of our presentation.
Questions? Go ahead.
This is more of an explanation for the public. We're only talking about east of 115th Avenue. Would you explain why we're not addressing west of 115th Avenue?
Yes, Mayor. So west of 115th would be provided by private water companies and not by the city of Glendale.
Thank you. And I think that is important to note for the general public, is that we do not provide water beyond 115th Avenue. Thank you.
Any questions from council? Okay. Everybody good with their proposal? Okay. Ms. Bauer.
Council item of special interest, amphitheater business plan.
Mayor, members of the council, here to provide staff report is Jesse Peterson, Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. I'll just wait for the presentation to get pulled up. Excellent. So the purpose of this presentation is to discuss a council item of special interest related to Councilmember Turner's request for an amphitheater business plan and to get direction as to whether staff should bring this item forward for further review in a council workshop. Am I able to control? Oh, got it. There it is. On April 25th, Councilmember Turner requested that we look into a business plan for the amphitheater upon the completion of the downtown campus reinvestment project, to include information on comparable facilities and types of programming anticipated for the renovated space. The goals associated with this item of interest would include providing information on the type of programming and entertainment that is expected to be booked in the renovated amphitheater. Included in this information would also be the type of programming that would have been booked in the last several years if the amphitheater was updated. Additionally, it would be to provide information on comparable public and private facilities nationwide to include operation models with success and failure factors, and then to provide a business plan for the renovated amphitheater that would include operations and maintenance plans, staffing management models, as well as projected expenses and revenues. To accomplish those goals, this is what it would take for staff to do that. We would have to work with Budget and Finance to procure and retain professional consultancy to assist with the research and compilation of the requested information. We would also hire a consultant to evaluate or once we hire that consultant, we would take that information and the compiled data on comparable facilities nationwide and put that into a report to bring back to council. We would compile a speculative list of the type of programming and entertainment that could be booked for an amphitheater type space with the acknowledgement that the space is still in the design phase of the DCRP. And then staff would work with the hired consultant to compose a suppositional business plan on potential operating models, staffing models, expense and revenue models, as well as the maintenance, again, with the acknowledgement that the space is still in the design phase for the DCRP. So our timeline for this staff time required, we anticipate initially to be approximately 30 to 50 hours. That would include time required by special events, Parks and Recreation, Budget and Finance, as well as the DCRP team. And then additionally, a scope of work, including time required to complete the scope, would need to be defined with that hired consultant. So the next steps are, if council provides consensus to move forward, we would start going through those deliverables and come back to council with the responses to those stated goals at a future workshop.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mayor. I suspect that perhaps the members of the council are familiar with my request, having heard it more than once. We are looking at spending a significant amount of money into revamping this amphitheater, and I think it's responsible of us to try to establish what we're committing future councils to, in addition to what this council will be looking at, and trying to wrap our heads and staff's heads around how can we maximize this utilization. Where are others in the country that are being successful? What model do they use? And how do we build a success out of this? We've had an amphitheater in downtown Glendale since the 80s, and I don't know anybody that would assert that it's lived up to its potential. And I think that if we're making this kind of an investment, we need to make sure that we have a clear vision of what we're getting into, and that we're looking at how do we maximize the potential for it, and bring the types of events that our residents will want and maximize their return on this investment. I've had any number of residents ask me, what's the plan for the amphitheater? What kind of stuff are we going to see? And I, for one, don't have an answer for them, and I just think we ought to. So I would ask the council to support my request to produce this information so that we're making decisions based on, the full amount of information available to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Was there a cost for the consultant? There's no cost in here.
Mayor, Councilmember Aldama, that would be something that we would have to bring back. So at this stage of scoping, it's our intention as staff to just acknowledge that would be a step we would have to take if we were going to move forward with this item of interest.
Typically, when we've had items of interest and there was a consultant scoped out, there was some cost. You don't have any estimate?
I'd be remiss to probably note what a cost would be right now. I just wouldn't want to cite a cost in this moment.
I can respect that.
Okay.
I could support this request if we are going to move in the direction of having the types of events that we discussed along the entire way of these meetings for the DCRP project, and the types of acts, the quality of acts, then yeah, we need to have a really good plan. This is exactly what a private partner would do. They would put a plan together, bring it to us, and this is the cost they need. So I can support it, knowing that our staff has some great ideas for entertainment out of the amphitheater when it's completed. Therefore, having a plan in place would be an effective way to learn what those costs are. I could support it.
Thank you, Mayor. I especially think the goal number 2 is pretty important, to provide information on comparable public and private facilities nationwide to include operation models and success and failure factors. I think it's really important, would be really important to understand, especially now, we're kind of on the front end of it at least, of what things worked. This is something that several years ago, I had my council assistant and I did some research, and we had difficult time finding successful municipal amphitheaters around the country. So, but I mean, we strive anyway to be a data-driven organization. I think this is an important part of this piece of this puzzle, is finding out what works other places, what will work here, and having a real a plan that we have a lot of confidence in going forward. If we're going to invest, $10 million in this amphitheater, I think it's important to understand what's worked other places and what hasn't worked other places. So I would support it too.
Good.
My first curious question is there any public facility like the Foothills Center, the Adult Center, where we have a business plan created?
Mayor, Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Clark, I am unaware of if there is a business plan for those facilities. They just don't land under my purview, so I'm uncertain about that.
I mean, if anything had ever needed a business plan before it was constructed, it would have been the Civic Center. Yet we have no business plan per se for this Civic Center either. These facilities were built to provide amenities for the general population of Glendale, as will the amphitheater do. The city is not in the business of being a profit-making entity. If we were, we wouldn't have the Foothills Center, we wouldn't have the Adult Center, we wouldn't have the Civic Center, because they all require substantial funds from the city's general fund operating budget. So I consider building a business plan for just one facility in the city of Glendale, an amphitheater, really an exercise in futility. I don't see the necessity. As we move along, yes, we will have to incorporate staff and other expenses for the operation of the amphitheater. That will come up during our intense spring budget cycles. But at this point, I see us spending money for a consultant that is absolutely unnecessary. I would not support this. Thank you.
Mr. Hugh?
Thank you, Mayor. We came off a very successful run of having events on the weekends for the amphitheater. I was stunned at the crowds that would show up. I know the downtown merchants had to really appreciate that. I know we're in the design and we're designing an amphitheater. I don't want to get into an argument and say, well, we can't come up with a great business plan to bring certain acts in and then cancel the amphitheater. We're going to build this with the amphitheater, and I think it'd be just as successful as we had the run when we started bringing all the different acts into downtown. And it's going to be a whole lot nicer and make downtown a very special event location. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my question has to do with what is the plan? I mean, a business plan is typically a for-profit organization that comes in. Do we anticipate turning this over to a for-profit organization to operate our amphitheater and to bring in events, that kind of thing?
Mayor, Councilmember Melner, at this stage, because we're in just that design phase, that hasn't been the discussion about that facility. So back to the scoping statement and the goals, what we were asked to bring back would be what a suppositional business plan would look like for operating models, for staffing models, as well as cost and analysis on that.
So would that be then, you're talking about a model that the city would operate, a business plan that the city would operate, or what are you talking about?
Mayor, Councilmember Melner, it would be our expectation once we go through that benchmarking and get that type of feedback that we could certainly bring to council if there's other models beyond the city operating it. But at this stage, that would be part of what that business plan would include, would be what operating models look like.
Okay, I know that there's some very successful weekend events that, for example, I've had residents tell me about how successful in Prescott, for example. They have a downtown organization. I don't know exactly how it's operated. Are you familiar with that? Are you familiar how that operates?
Mayor, Councilmember Melner, not specifically the model you're discussing, but we've certainly seen different types of models exist out there, and that's part of what would be included if we were going to go spend that time with a consultant, would be to acknowledge what those models look like.
Okay. I just don't know if it's a little premature. I mean, I know we want to, make this a successful downtown operation. I envisioned that the city would more or less be operating that facility. do we anticipate that, say we have a group that wants to come down and use the facility, are we going to have a fee structure, or is it going to be available for use for the public? How is that going to be set up? Do we know that yet?
Mayor, Councilmember Melner, I think we're a little premature to just be discussing that at this stage for what that model of how the amphitheater will function completely, unless City Manager Phelps has anything to add to that at this stage.
I mean, that's kind of what I would like to, that's my anticipation. I don't know that, spending the money to do a business model is necessarily the timing, but maybe it is. I don't know. Well, I'd like to hear back from maybe the city manager on that issue.
Mayor, members of the council, Councilor Melnar. So again, to date, the only thing we've really said from the city manager's office was kind of basically incorporated into the pivot strategy that we presented to the council and to the community approximately now. It's been about 3 years ago. And so in that particular strategy, again, which can be revised and we can certainly go a different direction, in that presentation I made to the council and to the community, it was envisioned that we would continue to manage the amphitheater, the primary use of the amphitheater would be to use city resources to hire local entertainment and have them come and for a fee to play in downtown as a way of generating foot traffic. That would be the kind of the lion's share of the strategy, but we would make the amphitheater available and be very attractive in making it available to independent promoters who would then could also schedule to use the amphitheater, but they would spend their money at which to drive and to promote the event, having the same hopefully result, which is to bring more foot traffic to downtown that would then benefit our merchants. That is about as, that was kind of the general concept. Yet there are a lot of different models we could look at. We could certainly move to a model of seeing if whether somebody wanted to manage the facility for us. I mean, those are certain things, but that wasn't the initial concept. The initial concept was to try to drive as much content so that we get into a rhythm of regular events on 2 to 3 nights a week, hopefully a majority of the weeks throughout the year. And to do that, we were taking money that was being spent at that time on a couple of our larger shows and redirecting those revenues to be able to pay for the acts to come in. And then the remodeled amphitheater then fit into that strategy by making it more turnkey. It reduced down the amount of time that the staff would need to set up and tear down shows. And by having it more of a turnkey type of amphitheater, it would make it more attractive to outside independent promoters to kind of layer in their events with the events that the kind of the Live at Murphy Park concept was. But again, this was 3 years old. We can certainly go back and address a different strategy with that, but that was the initial concept.
Okay. Well, given that, I mean, I would like us to continue on that strategy. I don't know if it will require us to, come back and tell us more detail of where that strategy goes. But as far as moving forward at this point in time, that's the direction I would like us to go, is more in the realm of this is how we anticipate staff moving forward as this amphitheater is redeveloped. I know, I mean, I've been involved in developing business plans. I've been involved in companies that have created business plans. And typically, it's very good information. It does a lot of research. And at some point in time, I think we might want to do that if we feel like we want to change the direction. I believe that's what we're doing today. It seems like we're changing direction of what we plan to do at the amphitheater. And if that's the way the council wants to go, we want to change the direction and turn this into a business model, then I think that's different than where we've been planning to go, which is it's a resource for the community. We want to drive events to downtown by the city, by city staff, by promoting it and by doing that. And I think that's the model that we should continue to pursue at this point in time.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the councilman, Councilmember Malnar there. Maybe what we need to do is remove the name business plan, because in my opinion, this isn't a business plan. The councilman outlined that he's been involved in business plans. If you're going to open a business, bring a business plan, let's talk about your vision. That's not what this is. However, it's more of an operation plan, more of a model plan. We don't know right now which acts we're bringing, what size acts we're bringing. Are we going to have a box office? Are we going to have a paid admission? Are we going to have free? Which ones are the free ones? What type of music? What genre are we going to have? When is it open? When is it closed? Mesa Amphitheater was ranked by the New Times as one of the best venues in the state. They're similar to ours, and then when we are done, it'll be pretty close to it. And so if you reached out to them, they would tell you, yeah, we have this operation plan. This is how we operate. So both of what the councilman mentioned and what our city manager just mentioned, I'd feel that this plan that you have, the scope of work, meets that request. Bring that information back, and now we know fully how the amphitheater is going to function when it's all complete. So that doesn't have to happen immediately, but your scope of work meets that. Just need to remove business plan. It's not a business plan. It's more of an operation and a model.
Thank you, Mayor. I was thinking the same thing. I mean, it's not going to be a business, but to have a plan on how we see this operating, and you know, should we bring in, what do other people do? Do they have an outside promoter? Does City of Mesa run it themselves? I don't know the answer to that. And then before we go and invest in a plug-and-play concept, you know, and maybe possibly invest in, I can understand the lighting and things like that being important, but as far as like sound and things like that, I wouldn't want us to invest a lot of money in different types of sound things and have bands and people come here for performances and not use any of it because they want to use their own stuff. So I think to have a good understanding of how these things work could, in the long run, save us some money too, and prevent us from maybe making some mistakes in investing in things that nobody's going to use and that haven't worked in other places. So, you know, I mean, you know, if we're going to be a data-driven organization, let's get some data. Let's make sure we do this right, and we don't spend money on things that are not going to be used. Like I said, the plug-and-play concept is a good idea, but we need to know, like, what exactly does that mean, and what types of things that, because at least most bands bring their own stuff because they know what it sounds like, they know what kind of sound the amps are going to make, where to put things, where they stand, how it all works, and I'd hate for us to spend a bunch of money on something that's not even going to get used. So I think that could all be part of this exercise in figuring out how this is going to work. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Mayor.
Well, it seems like the idea of a business plan has gone down like a torpedo. I mean, now we're calling it an operational plan, but I think that this is something that staff typically and ordinarily would do without the use of a consultant, would be to develop plans in terms of operation and staffing and expense. And that will be coming to us, I am sure, as we get closer to the end of the remodel and the end of the remodel of the amphitheater. I think it's all kind of premature right now to be driving this discussion the way it's going. I would, again, I am not in favor of a business plan. I fully anticipate that staff will bring forward a plan of operation for the amphitheater at a workshop that council will weigh in on, I am positive about, and that it will be produced in due course. I mean, we're a year and a half, 2 years from having this entire campus remodeled. There is certainly time, and I think that, as I said, it's rather premature, and the idea of a business plan per se is unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, maybe to wrap things up, I'm not sure, but I just want to be sure people understand I'm not trying to cancel the amphitheater. if you recall, the last time we had consensus to move forward on that, I was supportive of the plans that we had for the amphitheater. I'm not resisting that. I'm not trying to cancel it. I'm not trying to undermine the pivot strategy either. I think that it has value, and I always have. I may have thought that we cut too deeply, perhaps, into Glendale Glitters, but I've always supported the concept of bringing other entertainment at other times of the year into downtown Glendale. I don't understand what the hang-up is about a business plan. I don't personally care what we call it. To me, in my experience, that was the closest description I could give to what I think would be most helpful to us in moving forward on this. And I full well as anybody up here, understand that communities, cities provide lots of things that don't make a profit. I mean, it's silly to think that we don't. And as was mentioned, you know, perhaps a business plan would have been a good idea for our civic center. Perhaps a business plan is still a good idea for a civic center, I'm not certain, but if a business plan would have helped us to have a civic center that hasn't languished the way that it has for the last 20 years, then it would have been an awfully good investment. And that's what I'm looking to accomplish here, that we make the effort to learn up front what has been successful in other communities, to avoid mistakes perhaps they've made. You know, maybe they've learned things after languishing for 10 or 20 years that now they've changed their operation and it's over the top successful. I would like to see us do that, and I think even though we don't have a hard number on what a consulting contract would cost, we don't have to, we don't have to agree to that at this point, because that number will come back to us for approval if it's less than $50,000 or if it's more than $50,000. So I just think, we know going into building a new library what the construction costs are going to be, what the book cost is going to be, what the staffing cost is going to be, and we can look around the country and see plenty of other successful libraries. And if there are other successful, even one or two other successful municipal amphitheaters, I think we owe it to our residents to try to learn everything we can from them. So I would encourage you again to support this. I think it's a smart investment. I don't know that any of us would put $10 million of our own money into an amphitheater concept without having some idea. And even if we were a private foundation and had all the money that we needed and we were looking at this as a contribution to the community, I think we'd probably still want to have an understanding of how's it going to operate, and what are the losses, if any, going to be, or what are the profits going to be. There's lots of nonprofits out there in the world that operate with a business plan. That business plan is not tied to profit or loss, making money or not. It's tied to how do we operate our business to deliver the services that we want to as efficiently as possible. And that's what I think we ought to be doing. Thank you.
Mayor.
Mr. Phelps next.
Mayor, members of council. So first, I think it's actually, it would make a lot of sense to have an operational plan developed on this. So maybe propose maybe some timing issues on this. If you recall, part of our design team, they have the amphitheater consultant on board. I think we would be able to start getting information and looking at what type of acts and what type of amenities once we really get a better understanding what the council wants to do with regards to the capacity. We're going to be showing you some different variations of what the amphitheater will look like just from a physical built environment. So perhaps we're going to probably have some opportunity to talk with the consultant along that line. Once we understand what will be constructed, then I think it'll be easier for our economic development team to start working on maybe a proposed operational plan. So I think it's more, in my mind, perhaps a little bit of timing. If we did an operational plan today, we don't know yet whether it's going to seat 500, whether it will seat 800 or 1,000. I think all three of those scenarios might drive your operational plan slightly different. And if it is 1,000 seat, maybe the larger venue has more is more attractive to an outside management firm to come in and management, so we could certainly take a look at that part of it. So I think the idea of an operational plan makes a lot of sense. I think it's a little bit just the timing of it. I think by later this fall, we're going to have a much clearer understanding of kind of the configuration of the amphitheater, and then we can go forward. With regards to kind of the plug and play, what I will say, having owned and managed venues where we did attract outside bands, most venues have what they call house sound, and then they augment their house sound with kind of their monitor and specialized package on that. So I think we still want to look at what a basic sound system will look like. Again, our amphitheater consultant, that's one of the things they'll do, and we'll bring that information back. So I think many elements of what's being proposed here, I think need to be done and should be done. I would just, to Councilmember Turner, maybe just say, from a timing perspective, would it make sense for us to get a little bit farther along this fall in terms at least the basic components of the amphitheater, and then we can start working on an operational plan. Again, not trying to derail, we'll do whatever the council wants to do, but that would be just something I might propose for the council member.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions for both Mr. Phelps and Ms. Peterson. How far along are we on drawings for the amphitheater, architectural drawings?
Mayor, members of council, Councilman Aldama, as we, in our last workshop, we finally locked in on the basic elements. So we now have a design project. So we now know the physical dimensions of the space that the amphitheater will go in. But if you recall, they showed some graphics showing some kind of portable seating, and then they showed some options of having some fixed seating being there. That's what will get fleshed out here over the next several months. Okay. We're not talking next year, we're really talking later this fall.
Okay. Questions for Ms. Peterson. Thank you for that. Just a couple questions for you. Do you know the genre of music you're going to bring here?
Mayor, Councilmember Aldama, yes, it's all genres.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do you know the budget you're going to need to run the facility when it's done?
Mayor, Councilmember Aldama, no, not at this time, not without it being fully designed.
Okay. Do you know which acts are going to be paid or not ticketed?
Mayor, Councilmember Aldama, not at this time.
Okay. Would you know what the seating capacity should be for whatever operation you're thinking you're going to have?
Mayor, Councilmember Aldama, as Mr. Phelps mentioned, those are all being discussed as part of the design currently.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Peterson. The reason why I'm asking you that is because this type of plan that Councilmember Turner is asking for is going to give our staff guidance. They're going to come back and say, here's the plan that requires us that we want to have 14 events every year. 4 of them will be ticketed. We need a capacity of X seating. And this is our operation plan. This is the budget we need. This is gonna, and then within that budget, you can just go crazy. Let your hair down and go crazy because we've given you that. This is guidance that our staff needs to operate the amphitheater. And Mesa Amphitheater has significant acts, and they are operated by the city, owned and operated by Parks and Recreation and Community and Facilities. So I don't see why our staff couldn't do it, but they don't have a plan. This would allow them to build the plan alongside with our architects to tell them how many seats we need. Do we need a box office? Are we going to ticket anybody? Do we need gates? So I think now's the time for a plan to be put in place so our staff has guidance. That's my opinion. I think it's worthy of having a plan.
No other discussion, so my question will be first, is there a consensus for Mr. Turner's recommendation?
Yes.
Mayor, if I can, I would be in favor of doing what Mr. Phelps suggested.
But right now I'm asking for Mr. Turner's.
To do a consultant and all that?
Right.
No.
Okay, so I know where you're going because that's where I was going. So we do not have a consensus for that. My second question is there a consensus for what Mr. Phelps recommended? Taking that same idea instead of a business plan, pretty much a plan rather than calling it a business plan, and then bringing back to us all the things that are possible where we can make decisions as we go, as we learn more information.
Yes.
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 Okay, we do have a consensus for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're clear on, okay.
Yes.
Ms. Bauer.
Council item of special interest, Glendale Glitters.
You doing this one too?
I'm doing this one too.
Oh, okay.
So the purpose of this presentation is to discuss a council item of interest related to Councilmember Aldama's request to evaluate the restoration of Glendale Glitters and to get direction as to whether staff should bring this item forward for further review in a council workshop. So on this slide, there's just a little bit of background first about Glendale Glitters. It's a holiday event that began in 1993 in downtown Glendale. Over the years, the event has evolved in size and scope. The Special Events Division is responsible for planning and executing the event each year based on allocated funds approved by council. With the direction to implement the downtown pivot strategy, which was recently mentioned, we intend to use as the Special Events Division to increase programming in downtown throughout the year. Holiday programming then in downtown shifted to focus specifically on holiday lighting. The scope of this item of interest discussion and the subsequent deliverables is being focused on the evaluation of the requisites to restore Glendale Glitters as the signature recognizable traditional holiday event in downtown Glendale. So the goals associated with this item of interest include a presentation at a council workshop of the historical records of what Glendale Glitters was and its impact on downtown previous to the pivot strategy, is to evaluate the requisites to restore a scaled version of Glendale Glitters as a city-produced event in Murphy Park and Catlin Court, and then present at a council workshop the requisites required to restore a scaled version of Glendale Glitters upon the completion of the downtown campus reinvestment project. That would include event scope, timeline, costs, economic impacts, and a recommended event footprint. The deliverables to accomplish those goals include compiling the available historical data for Glendale Glitters, procuring and contracting that professional services to help us provide the evaluation and feasibility of site infrastructure and capacity for various event footprint options, and then using that site analysis information to provide best practices, as well as to develop the event scope options that would meet the request for a restored Glendale Glitters event. Staff would then develop estimated budgets for each scope option to include what those infrastructure improvement requirements would be, event logistics and management, labor, and hard costs associated with that. And then all of that would come back to a presentation at a future workshop. The timeline and administration of this item of interest, we anticipate to be initially 30 to 50 hours. That would include time from special events, parks and recreation, budget and finance, including procurement, field operations, engineering, transportation, public safety, as well as the DCRP team, and potentially other city departments and divisions that are involved in the evaluation and planning of Glendale Glitters. Additionally, a scope of work would be included in this as well, and the time required to complete that scope, specifically with a hired professional on that infrastructure analysis that I mentioned. So the next steps on this item of interest would be, if council provides consensus to move forward, we would get to work on those deliverables, and we would bring responses to those stated goals back to a future workshop.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate you. And just also, I'm not sure if you mentioned in there, but part of the scope of work would include just considering the fact that we're going to have a construction project, and when those, you may have mentioned it, the timelines of them, because we're not saying have it now before the construction, but this is a 30-year event, 30-year tradition that we've had. Because of the pivot, we pulled away from it and did the lighting. We lost a significant amount of spectators who used to come to downtown, which helps our businesses here. And so there's still time. I know that there's some municipalities out in the East Valley who now know that we are not doing this event, and they're building their own. And so now is the appropriate time, since we're going to be remodeling everything, to start looking into what it's going to look like to restore that. And if you speak to your constituents in your communities, they will agree with you that that was an event that they miss, and they'd love to see it back. At this point, when you come back, I understand there's 50 hours of and you can quantify that monetarily what that costs, but initially there's no cost to find out what it's going to take, and I think you can bring back some good information, and the event is worthy of restoring for downtown Glendale, especially when we're back and the building is remodeled and ready to go. The lighting is great. And I know that part of the pivot strategy was to rid of the circus-type fill. It's no different now. There's a lot of activity going on, and we really lost control. I shouldn't say control, the destiny of any event that occurs during that time that Glendale Glitters used to happen. There's great lighting, but there's no activities. And so I'd like to have support from the council in moving forward on bringing this back for a discussion on options to restore Glendale Glitters as we knew it, not just the lighting.
Thank you, Mayor. I would, on the deliverables, I would also like to see, and it's not my item of interest, but also to survey residents. I mean, and our residents, they love Glendale Glitters, and these kind of things give our residents a sense of connection to Glendale and what Glendale is and who they are, and generations of families have attended Glendale Glitters. So I would like to see if there's a consensus to do this, is to put up a survey, give us something to send out in our newsletter or something, but engage with the residents and see what would you like to see Glendale. My residents, at least, I got a lot of feedback that they wanted more, they liked the lights, they did not like the carnival, the blow up things, whatever those were in the streets and stuff, and I know that adds to the cost because you got to close down all the streets, but having a controlled environment in Murphy Park, that type of thing, I think people really like. And I think we learned that the lights really are the attraction. Even during COVID, we had to shut them off because we had too many people coming down here, during when they were, we're supposed to keeping people away from each other. We had so many people coming down here just for the lights and nothing else that we had to shut it down. So I think we've learned a lot over the last few years, but I think talking to residents, I think would be a key component of doing this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned to the city manager the other day, Paula Iliardo and I really started Glendale Glitters with our request back in the early 90s for 50,000 lights. I don't know if anybody on staff even is here to remember that. But that was the beginning of Glendale Glitters, or what came to be known as Glendale Glitters. I supported the cessation of Glendale Glitters because of what Council Aldama referred to, as a carnival event. It had just become, tacky. I think there is opportunity for not a resurrected Glendale Glitters, because the lights are the main purpose of, or the main driver that brings people down here. And quite frankly, all those food trucks that we used to bring down were in competition with the restaurants. The restaurants have done better without those competition of the food vendors for Glendale Glitters. I think there's opportunity for something modified. In my mind, if we want to provide any activity for residents, it should be musical. Theme Christmas music in conjunction with the lights. But again, I think this is kind of premature. We're about to reconstruct Murphy Park, and the item of interest asks us to look at Murphy Park and Catlin Court. Well, that makes no sense, since we're going to be doing reconstruction of Murphy Park. I think there is an opportunity to bring back something modified, and I think that it is worthy of consideration. I think it's too early to be considering it, quite frankly. And I would like to see this come forward when we're a lot closer to having finished Murphy Park, and we see what Murphy Park looks like and what it can hold and not hold in terms of downtown events. So right now, too early, can't support it now. I can support it down the road.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think what what I connect with is on the third slide. It's mentioned twice, and it's about restoring a scaled version of Glendale Glitters. And I think that that's what we had actually hoped to do originally, was, or as I termed it, right-size Glendale Glitters. It had outgrown its own capabilities. It had become something that it had never been intended to be in the first place, and it was appearing to be carnival-ish. It's been cut to the degree now that we've lost, I would say we've lost control of the perimeter. We have a lot of wildcat activity going on down there with bicycle vending and backs of, people's trunks of their cars and backs of vans. And it is not presenting the image that we want for our community. It doesn't feel as safe as we would like it to be. I'm reflecting what people have told me about it. And the people I hear from want to have something that looks a lot more like a Hallmark Christmas than what we're producing right now, and or in what it had grown into, when most of us came onto the council. So I would certainly be willing to support this, and I think now is the right time. I mean, we don't need to be doing things at the last minute. By the time that we would be able to put this project together for, it's almost like the last item we discussed. By that time, we'll know what Murphy Park looks like. We'll have come to those agreements, and then we can start looking ahead as how we're going to utilize it, and then we can provide that information to the community and the business community. So I think now's the time, and we won't be too early. It's not like we'll come up with data and then decide that we went the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I believe that this council studied this quite a bit several years ago, and we determined that the scope that we talked about that was mentioned here about restoring downtown Glitters, I don't know that I want to go there. But I would agree with some of the comments regarding perhaps enhancing. But again, I think it's a little premature because I would guess with our new amphitheater, that's where I see us adding more value to downtown Glendale Glitters, is adding things going on at the amphitheater during downtown Glitters, not so much the old style of downtown Glitters, because I was very much in favor of changing that, because my residents, there are people that enjoyed going to that carnival type of event, but it lost its ability to really be a unique residential experience when it became that type of event. And so I was very much in favor of changing it. So I'm not interested in moving back anywhere near that type of event again. I think we can add some cultural things to it. I think we can incorporate the downtown new amphitheater into some plans. I mean, the reports I've received, and unless I'm mistaken, I've gotten some pretty positive reports from both businesses and individuals about how they like the downtown Glendale Glitters. Not everybody, because some people prefer the carnival atmosphere. But that's not what I want to see continue to happen in downtown. So I'm not sure that I quite understand what your scaled-down version would be. I'm not really thrilled about moving forward too much with bringing back much of what it was, but rather enhance it with some sort of events incorporating the downtown amphitheater and perhaps a few other minor changes. The lighting, I think, is critical. I think we discussed that earlier in our council this year, where we talked about what we want to light up, and I think that needs to continue. I would want to see it continue. There may be some enhancements to be done to that, but again, I'll put it back into the hands of the staff, really, as this develops forward, to come up with a plan that is going to make it better, but not bring it back to what it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I enjoyed what we had in the park. I kind of called it, it's great quiet time just to walk around and enjoy the lights. And I really didn't, I don't know if you're talking about the people who were selling the balloons with lights inside of it. That actually added excitement to the park. You see people walking around with them. The carnival idea, I have nobody complain to me that they want to come back with the carnival atmosphere. I just had positive comments about Glendale Glitters, how it was. If we can find some ways to make it better than that, I'm not sure what that would be. But I thought it was great. I came down to the park more just because it was easy and just walked through it. So I'm not sure when you want to enhance it, what that would be right now. Thank you, Mayor.
I think I have a different perspective than probably everybody. I didn't like the carnival atmosphere. I didn't feel like as I was trying to walk through the crowds, I literally felt like there was going to be somebody with a cattle prod bumping us to keep everybody moving. It was too much, and it really defeated, I think, the concept of what I think most people felt Glendale Glitters was about after its first couple of years, and that was to try to promote merchants for downtown. It was hurting merchants, it wasn't helping them. But here's I guess the question. I guess I'll make a statement, then I'll ask a question. I don't support this particular item, but I would ask the council, why would we not, as a council, actually put one of our commissions to use? That's what we have commissions for. Ask a commission to take the next 6 months and talk about the things that they would like to see, and then come back to us and make recommendations to us. Not that final recommendations for them is what it has to be, but at least give us some information from our citizens, the people that represent the city. Could it be better? I think it could be better, but do we want to go back and forth multiple times where people think that here's a council that changes with the wind? I don't believe we want to be known as that. I think we've accomplished some good things. Can it be better? Sure. But I think that time between now and the time that this whole project is finished, I think we have the next 6-8 months that we could literally put a commission together. Parks and Recreation, to me, seems like it would be the ideal one, and let them make some recommendations. We'll have a better idea where we're at with Murphy Park and the stage, and then I think this council can make a lot better decision at that point. That would be my recommendation. But as far as looking for consensus for this particular item, I can't support that. I don't hear a consensus on that.
I have a question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Well, first of all, nobody is saying that we liked the carnival feel. I've heard that a couple of times. And by the way, just to be clear, the vendors that are out there right now doing the lighting, they're following the rules. Great. That's great. They are entrepreneurs and they want to make some money, and that's a good thing. Mayor, you should support the item of interest and just add to that, because essentially we're asking the subject matter experts to look at the event, put a few options together, send that to the commission. We can put that in the scope of work. Just what you're asking is no different than what we're asking here, and give it to the commission, and the commission can give their blessing or modify it and go back to staff, and then staff can bring it back to us. So I don't see why we would not give consensus to look at this event and include in the scope of work having the commission.
Yeah, and I'm not going to argue the point. My point is to allow citizens to make recommendations to us, and then we come back and fine tune what we feel would be the ideal plan for a final approval from Parks and Rec or whatever commission we decide to do that. That would be my recommendation. So I think we're close. I don't think we're agreeing exactly, but I think we're close.
Yeah. If I may, I can accept close. We do agree on one thing, though, asking the community what they think. Unfortunately, when we went to the pivot, we didn't ask the community what they thought. That was the city manager's pivot. We didn't ask through a survey. We didn't ask the community, do you want to pivot from this to that? We did it. here we are. And so I agree we need to ask the community, but we didn't ask them when we pivoted. So to say that we need to go ask now, and that's important, but we didn't to go to the pivot. So I think that I feel like we give consensus for the scope of work and modify it to include the commission. I think that would, Mayor, I think that would suffice and give you what you're asking for.
Okay. So, again, I'm going to ask a question the way this was presented, because this is what was presented.
If I may, then I'd like to modify it. And my modification would be to continue with the scope of work, including that our staff will present this at a commission, preferably Parks and Rec, or whichever is appropriate, and include community participation, and that would be what I would ask for consensus on.
Sorry.
Okay, and then if you're going off of what I was talking about, I did also say that I don't think that we need to have a decision in the next 3 or 4 months. I think we need to wait long enough to get a better idea of where we're at with the stage and
I can agree with that.
Any other discussion on this item? Okay, so are you fairly clear on that? No?
Mayor, just so I understand, my direction would be consensus on all of the deliverables that were listed in there. So that's meeting all of those goals, including all of the deliverables that were listed in there, with the addition of another deliverable that we take that information to a commission and do a survey of the public.
Okay,
that's what I would be hearing right now.
That is not what I was saying, but you had a question?
Well, you just said, you said, is everybody clear? I said, no, I'm not clear.
Yeah.
I support that, what she just said. That's what I support.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
I don't think the need for a consultant, which is part of this proposal, is necessary. I do like your idea of asking Parks and Recreation to envision what Glendale Glitters means to them. But again, I think it's premature. Until we know what Murphy Park looks like, we're shooting in a blind alley. We don't have the necessary information that anyone needs to make any kind of rational decision about this issue. I do not support the current proposal as stated, even the amended version. But I do support the idea of bringing it back to citizen input via the Parks and Recreation Commission. But I think it's too early. Thank you.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
Let me just, one last ditch effort, because I see where we're going. Let's call this Mayor Wyer's idea. Let's go with his idea. I'll take it. It's just important to me that we look at bringing a 30-year tradition back to Glendale. And if we get this across and you survey community members, overwhelmingly, you're going to get a response to, yes, bring this back. It's going to be contingent on you and your expertise and your team to tell us what that looks like, what that new footprint looks like. But I'll yield to the mayor and give it to him, and I will agree with the mayor today and say, let's get this across the table with Mayor Wyer's idea. I'm fine with that. And no, we don't have to have it back in 2 or 3 months from now, so I agree with that. But however it takes to get it across the table, I'm there. I just know that the community is crying for this event. Let's work with them, and let's work with our commission. So whatever it takes.
Mr. Phelps.
Mayor, members of council, maybe just, I think maybe what some people are getting, I want to explain that kind of contractual professional services. I think the initial thought was, what would it take to do the original glitter? Well, what's happened is we haven't maintained some of the electrical infrastructure, so we thought, well, we'd probably have to hire an electrical contractor to come out and to do an analysis of all the infrastructure. We can do this in phases. So we could certainly look at what a re-envisioned glitters look like, and then depending on the consensus from the community and from the council, we could then go the next phase and say, all right, now what will it cost to implement that? And that's when we can bring in the consultant to do a more deeper dive to understand what the electrical's really taken kind of a beating over the last few years, and so that's from a staff perspective and a cost perspective. We wouldn't want want the council to make a decision without kind of eyes wide open if they said, yeah, let's go to a full, robust, glitter production. So I think you could do this in phases. I think most of the deliverables there we could do, and then maybe just hold off on actually studying the infrastructure right now until there's a little bit stronger consensus from the council.
Mr. Phelps, you bring up a couple good points. The electrical, I've noticed multiple places where the boxes come out of the ground, people stand on them, they drive over them with their cars, they hit them. A lot of damage. During the reconstruction of the park and this building and everything in the area and whatever we end up doing with the library, can some of those be maybe taken care of at the same time where they're elevated, where they're not getting beat up and stood on and broken by people with nothing better to do?
Mayor, members of council, so let me talk about two separate things. With regards to the Murphy Park site itself, yeah, it would be my expectation in working with the design team that we really think through the infrastructure so that we can do events like the Glendale Glitters, and we do it in a way which minimizes our replacement of things, do them a little bit smarter. But remember, we also kind of expand our lighting in other areas of the city away from there. That was where the consultant was going to be needed to kind of look and say, what's happening down in Catlin Court? What's our lighting in these other areas? What's the power for that? And so I think, yeah, whatever we do with Murphy Park, it should be designed with having electrical infrastructure and other types of infrastructure to make sure we can maximize that site as a venue to produce an event maybe we haven't even envisioned today. But I think going back, the contractor was really also to look beyond Murphy Park, because in lighting down the side streets, especially our north-south streets that go to Catlin Court, there's quite a bit of deterioration in the electrical system there that we'd need to address.
Okay, we've talked about so many different things. I'm not sure what we're going to try to agree on. So what I'm hearing from some and not hearing from others, the original proposal was going through the city and bringing all these things forward. I don't know anybody has a major problem with that getting done. I just don't know if anybody wants to do it in the next 6 months. But I think most everybody that I've heard, I think everybody does agree with the fact of bringing in our citizens to make recommendations on what they would like to see happen with Murphy Park. If that step was done first, then could not this step be done in addition to that once we have a little bit more information? Is my question.
Whatever you say, sir, I'm on board. Let's do it.
You don't want to give me that much lateral.
Let's go for it. That's the only way we're going to get across here today.
The only thing I'd say is until we have this downtown campus remodeled, I don't know that we know exactly what we want to be able to put here. I'm really concerned if we spend all this money in downtown campus and then we bring in events that are going to just trample it down, as was discussed, the grass and the fixtures and everything else. I'm really concerned about that. I believe we're going to have to give it some time before we even talk about what it's going to look like, until we see Murphy Park, see what it looks like, we'll then decide, are we going to then want to bring these events down that we know are going to cause destruction to it? Because it will. If we're going to try to bring down any kind of semi-large event, even a way scaled back event into Murphy Park, it's going to cause destruction in the Murphy Park. And I don't want to see that happen. I want to see us have a downtown Murphy Park that utilizes the amphitheater, that has maybe a few things going on, but not to any larger scale than that. And so I believe we have to kind of wait even further before we decide where we want to go with this. So I'll yield to the city manager.
Mayor, members of the council, not to add complexity to this discussion, but maybe consider just the exact opposite.
That's right.
That if we kind of know where the city, how they would want to use at least the Murphy Park envelope as it relates to, let's say, glitter during the holiday season, then we can give that information to the design team, and there we would then try to build that in. So for example, if the council says we want to be able to accommodate 50 booths of vendors for the Glendale Glitters, we're going to have to reduce down quite a bit of landscaping and create workable areas that are flat and level that you can, that you could set that up. However, on the other side, if the vision was we want Murphy Park really to be the kind of the lighting oasis, and really the only thing really going on in Murphy Park is just to bedazzle people with all the lights, but we're not going to be doing a lot of other programming, then we could give that information to the design team as well. And they would then maybe leave more open space and not have to worry about programming. So maybe, I think both points are relevant, but I think that if we knew what the council wanted to do with regards to glitter, I think it would be beneficial to our design team as they really start working on Murphy Park.
Mayor, thank you. Precisely what I was going to say. You took the words out of my mouth. It's exactly why we need to do this. And the other thing is, let's just say it today. Do we want to have Glendale Glitters as we know it modified back in our events inventory for the city of Glendale at Murphy Park, and who knows where the footprint will expand to? If the answer today is no, we don't want to see that back, then yeah, we're done. But why are we going to design a park around something, a huge event that you're not going to give information to? So I think it's important that we say, yes, we want the event back in some different modified way. Here's what it's going to take. No, you can't have landscape there, DG. You need to have turf there. You need to have electrical there. So this goes hand in hand. This is the appropriate time to start planning. We don't have to have a 100%, we have an event footprint in the next 2-3 months. It could take 6-7 months. But it needs to go in hand with your architects. Otherwise, if we're not going to have the event, then go have at it and do what you want at the park, I guess. It doesn't matter, but it goes hand in hand.
Mayor?
Yes.
I would be willing to move forward with that. However, I am not in favor of bringing back Glendale Glitters. If we want to study it and have a consensus on what we want that to be, but I do not want to see it, and the question was stated, if we don't want to bring back Glendale Glitters, then let's stop here. Well, I don't want to bring back Glendale Glitters as people know it. I do not. I want it to be what it is plus some enhancements, but not bringing it back. So maybe there's just semantics here on that. But so if we want to move forward and staff can move forward on these items, I wouldn't have a problem doing that. But when we come back to a discussion, and I guess that would be the decision at that point in time, the scope that we present as to whether or not we want to do it, then we can make that decision. But I don't have a problem moving forward at this point.
Mayor?
Hold on, she's next. Then we'll go to you.
Me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councilmember Malnar makes a good point, and I think maybe the very first step has to be for council to come to consensus of their concept of Glendale Glitters. Does it include food vendors again? Does it include bouncy playgrounds for the kids? Exactly what is council's vision for Glendale Glitters? And I think that's a discussion that we should have, like when we come back in August at a workshop. And that'll give us time to think and talk to our constituents about that as well, to try to get some input from them as to what they anticipate and would like to see in a Glendale Glitters. I don't want to see the old Glendale Glitters come back. As I've said previously, it was a carnival. That was never my intent. It was to honor the season in a traditional, respectful way. And that kind of morphed into something else. So I think maybe the very first thing that has to happen is we have got to come to our own consensus. And it's obviously a contentious issue because we all have different ideas about what it should be. But I think we're going to have to do that first before we go any place with this.
Thank you, Mayor. let's just get clear here. That no one is saying to bring back Glendale Glitters the way it was. Let me take you back before the pivot, and one of the reasons why the pivot came about. Many residents, business owners, and local business owners said, please clean up Glendale Glitters. This is what they said. We love it, but it's getting out of control. Clean it up. Rather than clean it up, we pivoted and said it's gone. So no one is saying bring it back that way. What I'm asking is to study how do we want to bring it back, and that's what the vice mayor just mentioned. So here's what I'll offer, just so the council knows. This information that Ms. Peterson brought back is a lot of her ideas, not mine. I just asked her, help me scope this out. What would that look like? So I'm asking to turn it back over to Ms. Peterson right now, and you tell us what that best looks like in a scope of work. If this is the scope of work that you support, then let us know. But I'm willing to say, scrap this that we put together. Tell us how that looks like, because it's not just it's just me bringing it to the table to say I've heard loud enough from many people that we should have Glendale Glitters back in a different way. But I'll yield to you, and you tell us how you want that scope of work to be, and let us give you consensus.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Aldama, I would support the opportunity to come back to council and discuss, as Vice Mayor Clark had brought up. And we've continued to move forward as the Special Events Division with planning events in downtown, because that's been our charge, including planning events during the holiday season, because it's an important time for us to do that in downtown. And so I think the opportunity for us to discuss that together, specifically this topic, would be the most appropriate way to handle this, not only while the DCRP project is going, but what that looks like after.
Like it.
You've been awfully quiet.
Who are you looking at?
No, you.
I said my piece.
Okay.
Then I sneezed.
Anyone else? Okay, so I'm just basically going to say the very last thing that Jesse had said is what everybody seems to agree on. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Do we have a consensus with what Ms. Peterson just did say? They're gonna go back and look at it again through what you heard this morning or this afternoon from all of us.
Yes.
Okay, and again, I don't know how big of a rush this needs to be, but when you come back, I would like you to incorporate the thought of having a commission involved. I think that's real important. So is there a consensus with that thought?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment. Yes, and my comment is trying to get more consensus, but those know more than the full boat here. Part of the reason for bringing back Glendale Glitters is what this council has asked for, to bring more people to downtown. This is what this does. It brings more people downtown. It has the potential of doing that. And so I just want to leave us with that, because that is one of our goals: revitalize downtown Glendale, bring more people down here for walkable traffic. And that's what Glendale Glitters will do. Thank you, and I look forward to what you're going to bring back.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a consensus. Thank you, Jesse. City manager's report?
Mayor, no report this afternoon.
No, thank you. City attorney's report?
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Council item special interest, Councilmember Aldama.
None at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Hugh.
Nothing, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Milner.
Nothing today.
Ms. Stomachop.
Nothing today.
Mr. Turner.
Not today, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Not at this time.
Wow. Okay, I feel like I should say something just because, but no, I don't have anything either. Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
No, I can't make the motion.
No,
You made the motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Here, guys have it. Do you have it? This council meeting is recessed.